Shannan Watts was a devoted mother to 2 little girls, with another one on the way, who once said of her husband Chris, "I love this man more than words can say. He's my rock, my love, my biggest fan, supporter and my husband. I couldn't have handpicked a better man to call my husband and father to our girls." Chris in turn appeared to be a devoted husband and father, with videos of him teaching his daughters how to read and enjoying family holidays and outings. So what went horribly wrong, and how did Shannan end up buried in a shallow grave near a property owned by Anadarko Petroleum, with their 2 little girls discovered nearby, submerged in crude oil tanks? This is the tragic story of the Watts family. Viewer discretion is advised, as we show some pretty harrowing footage. Chris and Shannan first met in 2010 in their home state of North Carolina, and they married on November 3, 2012, before moving to a large 5-bedroom house in Frederick, Colorado, where they welcomed their first daughter, Bella, on December 17, 2013, followed by her sister, Celeste, called Cece for short, on July 17, 2015. They appeared to have an idyllic family life. However, all was not as rosy as it appeared. In 2015, the couple were almost $450,000 in debt, and that same year they filed for bankruptcy. Their finances seemed to improve when Shannan took a new job, but they were by no means stable. There were also tensions in the wider family. Shannan had a difficult relationship with Chris's parents, and they didn't even attend their wedding. Text messages seemed to suggest that on one occasion, Watts' mother Cindy had put their daughter Celeste's life at risk by giving her ice cream that contained peanuts. In one message to Chris, Shannan wrote, "She's evil and willing to risk your daughter's life just to get under my skin. You and your dad are no different if you are okay with her behavior. There's nothing wrong with me and I'm not crazy. I just love my kids way too much." By 2018, Chris was working as an oil field operator at Anadarko Petroleum, and Shannan sold weight loss products from home, where she took care of the couple's 2 young daughters. Shannan had a huge social media presence and documented her seemingly perfect life on social media, with touching videos and glowing tributes to her husband and their girls. From the outside, it looked like the Watts were living a life of suburban bliss. However, cracks in their marriage started to surface, and Shannan was desperate to save their relationship. She was planning a weekend away for them both and had been looking at couples counselling. However, despite their problems, on June 11, 2018, Shannan recorded videos of her surprising her husband with the news that she's pregnant with their 3rd child. And just a few days later, she posted a sweet video of her daughter Bella singing about her hero daddy. Shannan hoped that the baby would bring them back together, but unbeknown to her, Chris had grown closer to Nicole Kessinger, who he met at work. Kessinger later claimed that Watt did not wear a wedding ring and acted like he was single, initially making no mention of his wife and children. Later telling her he was separated and was working through divorce proceedings. She said she believed him and didn't find out the truth until much later. By July 2018, Chris and Nicole had started an intense sexual relationship and saw each other 3 or 4 times a week. At first, Nicole wanted to take things slow, but when Shannan and their daughters went on a 6-week visit to her parents in North Carolina, Chris and Nicole's affair ramped up, and the couple went on several romantic dates and trips, and later it was revealed that Chris's Google history showed he'd been searching the internet for secluded vacation spots to take Nicole to while his wife was away. Towards the end of Shannan's trip, Chris joined her and the girls, but far from being pleased to see his wife, Shannan told friends he was cold and distant and uninterested in her and the children. Things didn't improve when the family returned to Colorado, and Shannan was telling friends that Chris wanted a divorce and that he was scared to death about the new baby and he didn't want it. Shannan was questioning her husband's behavior, and texts between them were tense. But Chris reassured her everything was fine and blamed work pressure. However, he was spending more and more time with his lover, leaving his wife's messages and calls unanswered. Around the same time, Chris was telling his mistress that his divorce was finalized. On August 9th, Shannan went on a work trip to Arizona. Whilst she was away, she sent a friend a draft of a letter she was writing to Chris about their relationship, including how painful it had been for her. You can pause the video now to read the letter. Back home, Chris obviously didn't feel the same way. He hired a babysitter for their girls and went on a date with Kessinger. At around 1:48 AM on Monday, August 13th, 2018, 34-year-old Shannan Watts returned home. She was dropped outside her house by her friend and colleague, Nicole Atkinson. As the two said goodbye, Nicole had no idea that would be the last time she would see Shannan alive. A few hours later, Chris and Shannan got into a fight, and he revealed that he was having an affair and wanted a divorce, and Shannan threatened to take their kids away from him. Later that day, Shannan and her two daughters were reported missing by Nicole after she became concerned that her friend was not returning her text messages and had failed to turn up to a scheduled appointment. Nicole also notified Chris, who was at work, but he seemed unconcerned when she told him that she hadn't heard from Shannan. He told her that he didn't know where she was, but thought that she was on a playdate but didn't know who with. Nicole did not buy this and called 911.
Hi, Cece. My name's Nicole, and I'm calling because I'm concerned about a friend of mine. I dropped her off at her house at 2 in the morning last night because we were out of town together, and we were on the way back from the airport, and she was having issues, and she's pregnant, and I haven't been able to get a hold of her this morning, and I've gone to her house, and her car's there, and stuff like that, but she won't answer the door, she won't answer phone calls, she won't answer text messages, and I'm just really, really concerned.
Police later turned up to do a welfare check, and the moment Chris finally returns home is captured on camera. As the police are questioning Watts, you can see he is buried in his phone and seems relatively unfazed at the situation at hand. The officer and Watts then head to a neighbour's home, and Chris's odd behaviour continues. The neighbour then plays back his security camera footage from the early hours of that day, and Chris tries to explain his movements and itemize exactly what he is loading into his truck. In reality, what he is actually putting in the car is Shannan's body wrapped in a sheet. Out of sight, he also strapped Bella and Cece into their car seats, and along with their dead mother, he drove out to a remote worksite. Here is Chris trying to explain what he's loading into his truck.
We had issues the other week when people were stealing stuff out of like garages and stuff like that. And I had parked my truck right here.
Right here.
Yeah. So someone, I could see where someone tried to jimmy with a flathead screwdriver over there, and it was just like...
During their review of the neighbour's CCTV footage, something very harrowing happens. An advertisement comes up showing a fetus inside of an hourglass, prompting Chris to tell the officer that his wife is pregnant. Bearing in mind, at this point, he had already killed his pregnant wife and two daughters. After viewing the footage, it's clear the neighbour has suspicions about Chris.
No.
The police then head back to the Watts family home and continue to question Chris about what's happened. In the hours after Shannan's disappearance, friends, family and the police were also suspicious of Chris. His demeanour and actions didn't seem to match that of a husband and father concerned about his family, and when he makes his plea for information, the general public also start to suspect he knew more than he was letting on.
Wherever they're at, like I have no inclination of where they're at right now. Like I've exhausted like every friend that I know of, and every friend that I have has called friends that Shannan has that maybe I didn't know about, and it's just like it's vanished. Like she's not. Like when I got home yesterday, it was like a ghost town. Like she wasn't here, kids weren't here. I have no idea like where they went, and it's just earth shattering. I don't feel like this is even real right now. It's like a nightmare that I just can't wake up from.
Nicole Kessinger saw the plea and was, in her words, in total shock that Chris was still married and his wife was 15 weeks pregnant. She frantically messaged Chris, asking him what he had done to his family. Her text read, Nicole quickly realised she could be implicated and in what some believe was a move to save herself, she voluntarily reached out to investigators. And on August 15th, 2018, she met with the FBI to tell them everything she knew. This is a few clips from that interview. You can watch the full 3.5-hour interview on YouTube via the link in the description.
To be honest with you, I mean, there were several discussions that we had about his current relationship and where it had gone and what it had caused. And he talked about his kids from time to time, but the thing is he was never hostile. It was never anything aggressive. Like, even when he spoke of his wife and the fact that they were separating, it was never like ill. It was still very kind. It was just like, this is not working, you know, and would explain why, but it wasn't anything out of the ordinary or anything that I think would scare me. And to this day, even after everything that I found out, I still look back at that and I don't see any red lights with the way that he spoke of his family. Like, I just started getting scared, and I remember like telling him that throughout the whole day. Like, I don't even know how many times I texted him that. I wouldn't be surprised if it's like 8-10 times, where I'm just like, I'm scared. And one of the last texts that I sent to him too, I told him, I said, I'm scared because I feel like I don't know who you are anymore.
Okay, how about psychologically? Do you ever think there's something wrong with this guy?
No, I wouldn't have dated him if I did. He honestly, I mean, maybe because I thought he was like one of the like most laid back and like decent men I'd ever met, and I just haven't met a lot of people like that. But I mean, no, not up until all this stuff started happening. Then I was like, whoa, you are not the person that I thought you were.
Shortly after, Chris was arrested and questioned. He later failed a polygraph test and confessed to his father and investigators that he killed Shannan. However, he claims he killed her after she smothered their 2 daughters.
Protect her. What? I don't want to protect her. You don't want to protect her? I don't know what else to say. What happened? Huh? She hurt him? Yeah. And then I killed her. Well, no, I killed, not her. You're a girl.
3 days after Chris had killed his family, on August 16, 2018, Shannan, Bella, and Celeste's body were found at Chris's worksite. The process of removing them was harrowing and took more than 14 hours. Shannan had been buried in a shallow grave, and 100 yards away, in 2 crude oil tanks, the bodies of the little girls were located. The diameter of the oil tank's opening was only 8 inches, meaning it would have been too small to fit Shannan's body. There are some details about what condition the bodies were in after being in the oil, but they are too horrific to say. To retrieve the bodies, the tanks had to be emptied, and the girls were found face down in the oil. The same day the bodies were recovered, Chris appeared in Wild County Court for a bond hearing, which is denied. On the 21st of August 2018, Chris was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder, plus 2 additional first-degree charges for victims being 12 or younger. Additionally, he faced another count for the unlawful termination of a pregnancy, plus 3 counts of tampering with a body. On November 6, 2018, Chris pleaded guilty to all 9 counts. Shannan's family request was that the death penalty not be sought. On November 19, 2018, Chris was sentenced to life imprisonment.
With regard to counts 4 and 5 relating to Bella and Celeste as a different theory of first-degree murder, the court is going to sentence you to life in the Colorado Department of Corrections, and legally those sentences must run concurrently as a different theory of first-degree murder. Recognizing the unlawful termination of pregnancy for the unborn child that has been named Nico, the court absolutely believes that the maximum sentence of 48 years would be appropriate to run consecutive to the other charges, with an additional mandatory parole period of 3 years as set forth by statute.
Judge Marcelo Kopkow calls the murder spree perhaps the most inhumane and vicious crime he has ever handled, out of the thousands of cases he had seen, issuing 5 life sentences without the possibility of parole, including 48 years for unlawful termination of Shannan's pregnancy and 36 years for disposing of the bodies of his family. The same day, Shannan's parents file for wrongful death against Chris, and in December of that year, they give an interview to ABC News Series 2020.
My grandchildren, I loved them. They were mine.
What do you say to yourself about that?
If it wasn't for God, I wouldn't be here.
Due to safety concerns, just weeks after sentencing, Chris is moved from Colorado to Dodge Correctional Facility in Whoopin, Wisconsin, where he remains to this day. Whilst in prison, Chris gives a chilling interview where he recounts the final moments of his young daughter's lives and how he disposed of their bodies. The calmness in which he describes such terrible events is disturbing.
Girls are still in the truck.
Okay.
Did they ask you what you were doing, taking mommy out, or?
Yeah, I don't remember what I told them, but they did ask that.
What they say specifically?
It was more like, what are you doing to mom?
Okay. Alright. And then the girls, right? Okay. You mentioned Bella was first. Cece was first, okay. Where exactly was she when it happened?
In the backseat.
Okay, was she just right next to Bella?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So once again, was it a hand over her face? Was it?
It was a blanket over my hand.
And then your hand. Okay. And then so that just stopped her from breathing type thing? Okay. Did she struggle at all?
I don't think so, but I was blocking her face and my hand was right here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You had one hand here and one hand over her mouth?
And were you just pushing her against the back of the seat type thing? Okay. What was Bella doing?
She was sitting there next to her. She didn't know what was going on.
Okay. Could she see you? Okay. Tell me about what you were thinking.
I wasn't. I was thinking it's what would happen.
Yeah.
Right, any partial hint of what I feel for those girls and what I feel for my wife, but none of this would have happened. So I wasn't thinking.
Okay. So she's in the back seat. Okay. And then once she's gone, then is it Bella next, or did you pull Cece out?
I pulled Cece out.
Okay, so once Cece's gone, Bella's still there in the car alive, and then you pulled Cece out. What did you do with her? Okay. So she went into the tank, and Bella was still in the back of the truck alive. Okay. With regard to that tank, did you bring up Cece, put her down, open the hatch?
Brought her up, opened the hatch.
And then put her in? Okay. And then went down to Bella. Tell me what happened there.
She said, what happened to Cece? First she asked, it was the same thing, the exact same thing that happened to me as Cece.
Did she ask you that? Okay. So Bella's pretty smart. How did she sound when she asked you that, Chris?
She said that just that soft voice she always had.
Yeah. And what exactly did she say?
She said that it's the same thing that happened to me as Cece. And then I said, I don't even remember what I said.
Okay.
I don't know if I just said yes like a horrible person, or if I just put that blanket over her too and did the same thing.
Same blanket, same way?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
She said, no, Daddy. And that's the last thing she said.
In the aftermath of Chris's convictions, there was speculation that Nicole Kessinger knew more than she admitted to. Many found it hard to believe her claim that she never looked at Shannan's social media and believed all Chris was telling her. Nicole knew that she was wrecking her home, and later her search history confirmed that when it was revealed she googled, "Man I'm having an affair with says he will leave his wife," and "marrying your mistress." She also had search terms for wedding dresses, and investigators found hours worth of searches for Shannan Watts. It's also quite telling that Nicole deleted all of Watts' information from her phone before she met with the police. However, despite this, it's unlikely she convinced Chris to murder his family, although she was almost certainly the catalyst that drove him to it. Their obsession with each other, and possibly her ultimatum, may have caused Chris to take drastic action in the deluded belief that if his family were out of the way, they could go on, get married, and live happily ever after, as if nothing had happened. It's been reported that Kessinger went into hiding after Chris was arrested, and might even be in witness protection for her own safety, although this claim is unconfirmed. It does, however, appear she changed her name. It has also been claimed by a former inmate of Watts that Kessinger was initially still in regular contact with him soon after he was sentenced. Another revelation was that Kessinger was not Chris's only extramarital relationship. A guy called Trent Bolte came forward after being tracked down by producers of HLN's Crime and Justice with Ashley Banfield, and claimed he enjoyed a passionate affair with Watts that lasted about 10 months. From his prison cell, Chris denied he is gay. However, after Shannan and the girls were found murdered, the police were interested enough in Bolte to interview him. This is part of that interview.
2017. Okay. He finds you, you guys meet, money and sex. Is that right? Okay. How much money?
That was the time, it was 250.
So you first met him in June. Is that true that in February is when you kind of found out he was married? And is it also because of Sylvester Bella's comment about, I want to sleep with you and mommy? Is that all is true?
Yeah.
Okay.
Bolte later went on to do other interviews with the media. In December 2018, Amanda McMahon also claimed she had met Chris on Tinder, and they had a brief intimate relationship. She described Chris as very forceful, alleging that he'd put his hands on her neck at one point. It's also been reported that Chris is regularly visited in prison by a woman called Anna Nowak. In fact, she visited him so often that she was refused entry on one occasion due to having used up her maximum visits. It's unclear what her relationship is with Chris, although she has been touted as his girlfriend. In an interview with Anna in the HLN docuseries Lies, Crimes and Video, Nowak blamed Watts' mistress, Nicole Kessinger, for the murders, saying Chris feels that if the affair had never happened, the murders would have never happened. Further confessions from Chris surfaced in 2021 when he told a pen pal that he had planned the murder for several weeks, and that he gave Shannan the OxyContin that was found in her system, hoping to end her pregnancy because he believed that would make it easier for him to be with his girlfriend. He also said he tried to smother his daughters before he left the house after he killed Shannan, but the attempt failed. Interest in the case peaked when on September 30th, 2020, Netflix released American Murder: The Family Next Door, a documentary about the murders that featured archival footage, including home videos, social media posts, and law enforcement recordings. The whole case seems so unbelievable it could be a fictional horror story. To annihilate the family you appear to adore is beyond comprehension, and it's hard to believe the motive was so that he could be free to marry a woman he had only met weeks before. How anyone could do what he did to those two little girls and their mother, and then speak so calmly about it, makes Chris Watts one of the most twisted and evil human beings ever, and certainly one of the worst cases we have covered. Rest in peace, Shannan, Bella, and Cece.